Hunter Biden's lawyers now threatening the IRS whistleblower. They came out of the woodwork. We know that Hunter has been facing some additional scrutiny. He was supposed to take this really sweetheart plea deal that we talked about in general terms. Still haven't seen the details on that, which are going to be critically important. But Hunter and his team strike back. They sent this letter over to the House Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee that was investigating Hunter and really the connection with the whistleblowers, Gary Shapley and the team over at Empower US on Twitter. These were the two whistleblowers who came out and explained that the DOJ and IRS were totally corrupted as they were investigating Hunter. This is the scoop over from Axios. They say that Hunter's lawyer roasts the IRS whistleblowers. They say the White House has been struggling to answer questions. The letter comes after the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, called Jason Smith, released transcripts. We've already read through many of those. Hunter apparently agreed to plead guilty. We still haven't seen the terms of that plea deal, and I really want to see it. But the lawyer is named Lowell. He's suggesting that the IRS whistleblowers are engaged in their own misconduct. And so the question on this is, what is the House going to do when they get their hands on the document? This is the letter sent by Abe David Lowell, partner over at Winston & Strawn. Goes over to the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee named Jason Smith. It's about the release of the transcripts and the proposed actions. So the committee released a bunch of stuff. We read through the opening statements of both of the whistleblowers. If you've missed those videos, they're here on our channel, wherever you're watching this. And now Hunter's lawyers are saying, how dare you release those transcripts? They say, dear Congress, since taking the majority in 2023 when the Republicans won, various leaders of the House and its committees have discarded the established protocols of Congress and even the law. They say you have an obsession with attacking the Biden family. Congress, your recent actions and joint statement with Chairman James Comer and Jim Jordan make clear that you have joined this ignoble group, adopting their irresponsible tactics as your own. In fact, yesterday's press release by three of you seeking testimony of dozens of law enforcement personnel based on unsworn and slanted statements of the IRS agent is now the proverbial card castle, something that looks real but has no foundation. Releasing the transcripts of and the exhibits from interviews of self-styled IRS whistleblowers who may be claiming that title in an attempt to evade their own misconduct was an obvious ploy to feed the misinformation campaign and harm our client. This is like a threat almost. You actually harmed our client, Hunter Biden, by releasing the truth. It's just an obvious ploy. And anytime you see this word harm, you've harmed us. You go, lawsuit alert, Hunter Biden harmed. And as this is brought as a vehicle to attack his father. It is no secret that these interviews were orchestrated recitations of mischaracterized and incomplete, quote, facts by disgruntled agents who believed they knew better than federal prosecutors who had all the evidence as they conducted their 5-year investigation of Mr. Biden, saying these people are just subordinates. All right, this IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley and Mr. X, losers. They don't know as much as the prosecutors do. Maybe they should stay in their lane. He says, let me be specific. Your release of material violated the spirit, if not the letter, of the tax laws and the federal rules governing investigations. He's now threatening the House Ways and Means Committee. You may have broken the law. And guess whose daddy runs the Department of Justice that is prosecuting people that they don't like? Oh yeah, it's Hunter. His daddy is Joe. They say your attempt to protect the IRS agents was a transparent effort to provide cover to those with a bias and an axe to grind, so deep and sharp as to allow to have them avoid answering for their own conduct under oath. And you choreographed the dissemination of incomplete half-truths, distortions, and totally unnecessary details about Mr. Biden. Well, he also, forget that laptop. We've seen a lot of totally unnecessary details about Mr. Biden, unfortunately. They say, ironically, your lawyers started each of the two interviews with a hollow recognition of privacy. He stated the following, we take privacy laws very seriously, but nowhere in the provision of the law, they say, nowhere in the provision is there the language to allow for the wholesale release of untested information. So he's saying that the lawyers were delivering an opening statement explaining, hey, these are what the laws are that govern what we do. And so he's just going through that and saying, well, they didn't really follow the laws as they say they did. It seems that the majority counsel should have read these provisions and warnings to you in addition to the witness. Okay, so you didn't follow the law exactly as you should have. There are myriad of good reasons for tax returns information to be kept private. One, this information can be complicated and nonsensical without a full understanding of them. Unless they're Trumps, then you just drop them out everywhere you want them. Another, tax return themselves can never explain how complex business entities operate. So all of those shell companies that Hunter Biden was creating, Rosemont, Seneca One, Bohan, advisors, whatever they were. I can't even remember all of them. There were dozens. It's taking it out of context. But of course, they have the full opportunity to provide an explanation for it. They haven't, of course. In addition to this law, criminal procedure prohibits disclosure of material obtained for a grand jury. There was no attempt by you people, by your witness or lawyers, to distinguish what information came from what processes. So in other words, he's alleging that they may have interfered with the criminal investigation. There are equally several reasons for grand jury secrecy. We want the grand jury to be secret and not be impeded by outside effects. Protecting the information that you improperly released, as well as preventing leaks of information, are so important that various courts have said that these disclosures are more egregious than the alleged crimes that the agents like Shapley are supposed to investigate. Wow. So they went and found a case from the Second Circuit 2018 case. It's actually a concurring opinion, so it's not a case. That's a little shady that he found that. It's a concurring opinion. All right. So that needs to be investigated, that site, by Congress. Obviously they will. Then alleged crimes that agents like Shapley are supposed to investigate. So in other words, saying that the disclosure of the materials is worse than Hunter's crime. At least once before, in April, Mr. Shapley used Congress to provide him cover to make the disclosures when he wrote a letter. This week, you did it again. So you're breaking the law, and you did it again. The timing of the agent's leaks, say Hunter lawyers, and your subsequent decision to release their statements do not seem innocent. They came shortly after there was a public filing indicating the disposition of the 5-year investigation of Hunter. Lawyers saying, well, it's very convenient. Now all of this timing came out right after you know that he was going to take a plea deal. It's like, obviously, that's why they're blowing the whistle, because the plea deal is corrupt. To any objective eye, your actions were intended to improperly undermine the judicial proceedings. This is a very good letter, by the way. So now he's basically implying that this is a bold letter to send to Congress. He's now also hinting that Congress has committed another crime, which is called interference with judicial proceedings, saying we had a plea deal scheduled. And you release this, now you're interfering with our plea deal. So that's a crime. Your release of this selective set of false allegations was an attempt to score a news cycle. Full facts be damned. We all know the adage. An allegation gets 1-page attention, while an explanation or an exoneration gets page 10. Page 1 is the allegation. It's the Trump boxes, right? Page 10 is, well, those boxes didn't contain any of the classified documents. They just look bad on the stage. This letter is an attempt to make sure the response is found. So this lawyer, right, I mean, gotta say, he's got a lot of brass, but it's probably easy to do that when your client's dad is the president. Accountability for leaks, meaning these are illegal leaks, and we want you to be held accountable for them, Congress. As you and your staff know by now, the investigation in which Mr. Biden was a subject was plagued by leaks to the media about the investigation that violate various laws, tax laws, grand jury rules, and other things. Of course, none of that applies to the Trump investigation. New York Times, Washington Post, they just get whatever they want. One of the most egregious leaks occurred when the Washington Post said that there was sufficient evidence to charge. They say this is a tried and true tactic of prosecutors trying to leak stuff to deviate the course. Happens all the time. With this known practice and the publication of the articles, your agents were breaking the law. 2 agents who appeared before you were not even sworn in. They were not told, as every government interviewer does, that providing false testimony could lead to criminal charges. And while the subject of the leaks came up once or twice, neither agent was asked. You obviously had disagreements with the prosecutors, right? And they didn't ask all of these questions that he says they should ask. He says, now that these shortcomings have been noticed, will the committee follow up now and ask everyone who came or come forward with the title of whistleblower to answer these questions that I want you to answer? He says it was a little more than odd for Mr. Shapley to start his interview by declaring, there is no reward for me becoming a whistleblower, and to conclude his interview by saying, thanks for listening. My life's on the line here. I don't know. He says Mr. Shapley may be reaping the reward from the cover you've given him. And how could Mr. Shapley's life be on the line? Well, because the Biden people want him dead or wrecking everything that they're working on. And if so, wouldn't intimidation or threats to federal agents be ripe for inquiry? He says also, your proceedings did not have any integrity. There was off the record stuff all the time. This happened many times. Can we go off the record? Can we go off the record? Can we go off the record? He's documenting every time. Your proceedings also adopted the agent's point of view. Your report fails to note that the investigation began during the Trump administration and that David Weiss was a holdover. What possible motive could they have for dishonesty if they kept a Trump-appointed lawyer, is the argument. He says the most troubling part of this, though, Congress, Hunter's lawyer to Congress, says perhaps the most troubling of all the committee's conduct was to allow the disclosure of one-sided, biased, incomplete distortions of Biden's conduct. In all law enforcement, there's a proper allocation of the roles. Just as intelligence in the sphere raw data must be reviewed and evaluated, so too in criminal investigations, the same process must occur. So he's now, man, this is that, okay, now it's becoming a little bit long-winded and I'm getting a little irritated with the letter. So So you have disgruntled agents free rein to present their views with no counterweight. You knew ahead of time that the agents disagree with broader views. He says you can readily know the slant that the agents put on the events, which is obvious. They are what do you mean slant? They're reporting on a cover-up that was conducted by their superiors at the DOJ and largely the IRS. He's saying that they're ignoring things like whether data could be accessed, copied, disseminated. In other words, the investigation is not thorough enough for their liking. But by the way, they don't have to play the defense. That's your job. They say in one excerpt that has gained a great deal of media attention, Mr. Biden is alleged to have been sitting next to his father, July 30th, when he allegedly sent a WhatsApp text message urging the completion of the business transactions. The inference is that the reference message was being sent to CEFC China to forward a false narrative about Biden's involvement in that company. The facts, which some media has now reported, are that President Biden and our client were not together that day. The company being referenced was not CEFC, but it was Harvest Financial Group with a person who also had the initial Z, and that no transaction actually occurred, is what they say. Never happened. Deny, deny, deny. More important, your own actions, Congress, call into question the authenticity of the communications and your use of it. The agent only described one message, but you took that purported text message and disseminated it on Twitter in 2 Twitter postings. Here is what Jason Smith posted on Twitter. Here is that text. Here is the Hunter text. They're saying, first of all, this was a different business. Saying it was a different business. Hunter was not in the room with Joe. There was no transaction, and it was a legitimate transaction. And we've already read that many times. He says that they basically assembled these images, right? They basically assembled these images, and here's a Chinese flag on one of them. So he's upset about the image. He says, what you've circulated are complete fakes, which is what we're really talking about is the text, right? But they put it, I guess what he's saying is they put it in a text format. Like this person is not really typing in this screenshot, okay? So that is misleading, and you are spreading disinformation. They say you also bring in some red herrings of making Weiss a special counsel and that they let the statute of limitations expire. So Abe wraps up. He says, okay, Chairman Smith, it is easy when a committee does not operate with fairness, thoroughness, and adherence to rules and procedures to forward a false political narrative. Gosh, were there any other committees that did something like that for months? Oh yeah, January 6th. You have done that. And it appears that you, joined now by other Republican chairs who have also been shown to shoot first, sometimes at their own feet, and aim second, will continue to do that. We can only hope that the specious methods you're using, some of which are laid out in this letter, will inform the public of the right way things should be done. So Abe David Lowell, counsel for Hunter Biden, sends this letter over to the House Ways and Means Committee, basically threatening them, saying, you guys have broken the law. Your whistleblower is a liar. You guys are liars. Hunter is an innocent person. This text message, don't read the text. The text is pretty bad. But Joe wasn't in the room. It wasn't a bad company. And the transaction never happened in the first place. I think a well-crafted letter. It's a long letter. And it is really for the purpose, I think, of the public consumption. It's to show that Hunter has a defense in mind, that he's not lying down, that he's really, I think, standing by this innocence narrative that he didn't do anything wrong. Everything was above board. There is no Biden crime family, even though he's taking a plea deal. And when you zoom out on this, it makes sense because they need cover for the plea deal. They need a story for the plea deal. And this is it. And I don't know if they came up at this at Camp David when they were there recently, but this is the cover. They'll take the plea deal, and then the rest of the attacks by the Republicans are just going to be partisan political attacks, and they have a defense that is being sent out in the court of public opinion. Because what I expect to happen is this plea deal is probably going to bring finality to Hunter. So they put this letter together to say that the whistleblower is in fact a liar. The guy who's been there, Gary Shapley, for something like 11 years, one of the most credible people we've ever heard from here who's worked from the government. And suddenly the guy who was directly involved in the investigation of Hunter and the other person, Mr. X, are now non-credible and should not be believed. And you just say, which one of these things is not like the others? Which one of these things just doesn't belong here? This transaction, being legitimate and above board, as this lawyer claims, doesn't belong here. The rest of the laptop, the rest of the allegations here are monstrous and massive. But this one was apparently great. And forget what Hunter said about my revenge and fury and all of those things. It's a nice attempt. I think that the Republicans will laugh at this and, just continue with their investigation. But it is curious. I mean, you got got to have a lot of cojones to send a letter like this to Congress, basically threatening them with crimes. Of course, it's a lot easier when your daddy is the president and you are basically in charge of the DOJ, the biggest, one of the most egregious entities in this whole country, at your whim. That's Joe Biden's office. So this lawyer sent it out, and we'll see what the House Ways and Means Committee does. Now, Shapley's lawyers responded to this. They posted this over on Twitter, and I highly recommend the follow at Empower US. They're doing great work. They work on accountability and public integrity through the power of information, something we can really stand behind. And the president is Tristan Levitt. So I'd give those guys both a follow. But here's what they responded with. They said, you know, the following was issued today from the legal team of IRS whistleblower Gary Shapley. They say, let's pull this open and zoom in on this. They say the following was issued. Biden family lawyers have resorted to intimidation before, reportedly threatening federal prosecutors with career suicide if they charged Hunter Biden. So this attempt to intimidate our client and the oversight authorities scrutinizing the politicization of that case is no surprise. IRS Special Agent Gary Shapley has scrupulously followed the rules and blew the whistle to Congress about the unequal application of the laws pursuant to the law, a process facilitated lawfully by the authority of both chairs of the tax committees, including Chairman Ron Wyden, with whom we are still working cooperatively to arrange follow-up testimony to supplement for the Senate any topics not covered in the transcripts of questioning by Republican and Democratic staff already released by the House Ways and Means Committee. So it is going over to the Senate, and there the Democrats will be able to take a look at it because they're in control of the Senate. Now, Shapley, as we can see, referred the October 6th leak for investigation, the one that they brought up in there as being illegal, to the inspectors general of his own agency and the DOJ. He volunteered to make the referral to his supervisors, as is shown in the very same email that reports that U.S. Attorney David Weiss, quote, was not the deciding person on whether charges are filed. That's from the testimony of Shapley. Falsely alleging that he was a leaker is just another baseless attack on him for blowing the whistle. Jason Foster and Tristan Levitt, whistleblower lawyers, they tell us, all the innuendo and bluster that the Biden family lawyers can summon, like we just read through all 10 pages of them, will not change the facts. Lawful whistleblowing is the opposite of illegal leaking. And these bogus accusations against Shapley by lawyers for the Biden family echo threatening emails sent by IRS leadership after the case agent also blew the whistle to the IRS commissioner about favoritism in this case, as well as the chilling report that Biden attorneys have also lobbied the Biden Justice Department directly to target our client with a criminal inquiry in further retaliation for blowing the whistle. Okay? It's so disgusting. They're literally going to be threatening this guy and maybe his lawyers with criminal investigations. So if you're not already, my friends, please go follow Tristan Levitt, Jason Foster, Empower Oversight, because they're going to need a lot more support. This is disgusting, but it's what they do. This is why the lawyer can send a letter like he sent, because he knows he's got the Biden DOJ in his back pocket. Probably has Merrick Garland's cell phone number. Directly targeting our client. These lawyers say these threats and intimidation have already been referred earlier this week to the inspectors general for the DOJ and the IRS and to Congress for further investigation as potential obstruction of their lawful inquiries, as well as retaliation against our client. You blow the whistle and it implicates the Biden crime family, they're going to sick the DOJ on you. You run for office, challenge the Biden presidency, they're going to raid your Mar-a-Lago home. This is what these people do. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden is just palling around at the White House as though everything is perfectly normal.